What's up everyone, Beast Mode back here with another video. So today we're going to cover the third deck in our little series that we're doing here, kind of just reviewing the four top decks of Edison format at this time anyway. We did a video on Blackwing, Hero Beat, this is going to be Vayu Turbo, and then we have the Hero Frog deck next. So Vayu Turbo, its strengths in my opinion are, well, there's a few. Number one being it doesn't really have a bad matchup versus anything. It's pretty good against the entire field, has access to one of the best cards of the format, Royal Oppression. It can either be main decked or sided. This is Sam Pustino's, hopefully I'm saying the name right, value list. I'm not sure what event it was, but they're all very similar. You might see some number of Royal Oppression in the main board, either one or two. Typically one is the number that people are kind of gravitating towards, but this here is probably a meta call because if there's a lot of value, you don't want to have this in the main board. Doesn't really do anything against Blackwing, so seems to be kind of drifting towards a sideboard now. This deck list here plays the Chaos Sorcerer, which is either Chaos Sorcerer or you play the Spirit Reaper build. So one strength again is it doesn't really have a terrible matchup. Number two, it gets to play some of the best trap cards or side deck cards. Deck Devastation Virus being one of them. This is probably the best deck Devi deck of the format. You can turn one Deck Devastation Virus somebody. It's a really good card. Well, it's a good card against frogs. Sometimes you just hit the hand where they don't have any small frogs and it's just all monarchs. That can happen, but this card's pretty strong against some of the A and B tier decks that you might run into, like Quick Draw, Synchro Cat. It's pretty strong against. So also Vandy's Fiend is another strong card that you can sideboard with this deck because you can just play from the graveyard and then drop a Vandy's Fiend. So that's strong. And again, Royal Oppression is very, very strong. So the last point, I feel that this deck is extremely refined. When you play this deck, everything just feels like it flows well. It's like, look at Blackwing. Obviously, every card in the deck kind of works the way it should work because they're all Blackwing cards, are all the same archetype. So obviously the deck kind of flows and feels clean when you're playing it. But this deck feels the same way, and it doesn't have all the same type of cards. You know what I mean? It's not the same archetype. Everything kind of is working together and doesn't feel bad often at all. I think James Ark is really the person who has refined the deck over the last few years, and I think at this point it's really just kind of done. Like, I think this is as good as this deck is going to get in terms of the main board. I'm sure, maybe a year from now, if Edison's still blowing up, that you might see some different main deck choices, a couple here or there, but I think this solid core, again, Chaos Sorcerer you can either play or not play, but I think the general idea of this deck is probably here to stay. And, obviously the Ryko hamsters just feel very strong. The Greffer, you can always discuss what ratio you want to have. Could be 2, could be 3, maybe no Armageddon. But for the most part, all of these cards gel well together. And that's why I think this deck is so strong. The Hero Frog deck is obviously, it's becoming that same way. Fraser Smith has really refined the deck at this point, has cut down on Monarchs, and I think that deck is becoming, it's similar in the sense that everything works well. Hero Beat kind of has a little bit of a problem because the deck is extremely consistent, but if it doesn't see Gemini Sparks and it has Alias, then you're in a bad spot. If it doesn't see the Water Monsters or you have Miracle Fusions, just kind of, it doesn't flow as nice as you'd want it to. It is extremely consistent, and in the games it wins when it draws a little bit of everything it needs. It's really hard to beat, and obviously Blackwing being one of the best decks of the format, that deck we've already discussed, every card works well. You draw a Blackwing monster, they all synergize with each other, and it makes sense. But this deck feels that it has that same type of concept, and every card in the deck is different. You got a hamster here, Ryko. But again, if you haven't played this deck, I would highly recommend trying it. This is not something I played often, but it was fun playing in the few matches I did to test it, and it just felt good. So let's cover a couple of replays really quick, and you can see how explosive this deck is. That's one of its strengths. It's extremely explosive. You can really just win in 2 or 3 turns. It also can play a pretty good control game with the Ryko hamsters and the Caius. D-Prison does have a good control game. This deck has a little bit more of the one card blowouts with the Burial. Burial and Dark Arm are just like auto wins in this deck. They added Return as well. Dark Arm in this deck is always live. It's amazing. You can have 20 cards, out of the deck already. You can be 20 cards deep in the deck, and Dark Arm is still live. Like 7 monsters can be in the graveyard, and 4 of them be Vayu and Siroko's, and you can still drop Dark Arm. So that's why I see so many games online being ended by Dark Arm, because it's always live in this deck. Zombies has a tough time playing Dark Arm as the match progresses. You know, after a couple Tomato Crashes, a couple Kaias, it's kind of hard to manipulate the graveyard aside from Book of Life. Blackwing, same thing. Once you have 5 Blackwing in the graveyard, it's pretty much done, right? Blizzard gets 1 out of there, but it's not that easy. So again, let's hop into a replay, and you can kind of see this here really showcases the explosiveness of the deck. So mind you, we don't really care. We're not looking at the gameplay per se, just looking at how explosive and how consistent the deck is, some of its strengths. Okay, so here we get turn 1 Dust Shoot. They send back Dark Arm. I'm looking at their hand now. I would say, of course, Dark Arm's scary because it's pretty much live all the time, like I said, but maybe sending back the Hamster is the right play here. So anyway, I think we're going to set... So what we do here is we don't set MST because we're pretending that this is, in fact, MST, because they're never going to want to MST this because, of course, we'll chain and then destroy that. So they're likely reading this as an MST. So we kind of do a little bit of trickery. And that's one thing I've found to do over the year I've been playing Edison is that if somebody Dust Shoots you, then if you just play exactly the way you normally would play, they're at an extreme advantage because they know exactly what you're doing, right? So sometimes if you play a little erratic, I'm not saying play like a complete buffoon, but play a little bit different, you can actually really maybe mitigate the damage that the Trap Dust Shoot has done because they're expecting you to do certain things and you're not doing it, and they're playing into those plays and you're not giving them to them. So just something that I've learned over the past year. So, and this is the prime example here. We have a card trooper coming in because they think that we have the MST set, and we obviously just deprison, and they could chain Book here, which would probably be decent, but they don't. And again, I'm not going to go into the whole play-by-play because that's not what this is about. This is just to see how the deck plays, talk a little bit about it, get an idea for, especially for newer players who are looking for some of the best decks of the format here. And then you get to see. So this is my second turn. We're in a very strong position here. Obviously, we got a free Raikou here, which is pretty strong whenever in any deck that can play the Hamster Raikou. You could make the argument of sending Plague to the graveyard, and then you can do some synchro plays, but I have another Armageddon Knight. So let's see here. We, at this point, are reading this back row as bottomless because, like, we haven't played anything big. We now set Return. So we don't set MST again because now they're going to say, okay, Deep Prison is gone, so this must be MST. And now I can also win next turn because if they don't set another back row, we can just return. I have MST for any back. I have MST for any new back row anyway. But so that's the reason why we set Return there, because again, this is, in their eyes, this is likely MST, and they're not going to just want to MST this because if it is MS, they're going to get punished. So I feel like Return is very safe setting there. And I think this is game. So there's a few different things we could do here. Can just summon the Armageddon Knight, send Plague, and make Brio. Pitch the Sirocco. We have MST. This is definitely 5,500 is like nothing to destroy with this deck. I'm not even sure why they bother chaining that because we get the effect again. It doesn't matter. None of this matters because we could have just summoned this Armageddon Knight and done it and did the exact same play. So we are saying they don't have Gores and we win. And they end up leaving the game. So that was just a showcase. That's third turn win. And we got Dust Shoot first turn. So they knew everything we play, what we had in our hand, and every play we could potentially make, although we didn't play into what they thought. But that just goes to show you how explosive that the deck is. It would have been, I probably could have won turn 2 if they didn't Dust Shoot me because I would have had Dark Arm. So that's the first replay. Let's hop on to this one here. So this is Matt K, player on Team X, just happened to be hosting a random game, so I hopped in. So this is a competent player here, and we'll see what happens here. So I don't typically play this deck, but when I do watch players play it, I don't often get to see some of the top tier players playing the deck, 10-foot, Arc, and all that. I don't really see all those replays, but when I see just generally people playing in a War League, they're often very aggressive with the deck, and I'm not sure if it's right or wrong to play like that. When I do get to see some of the better players or top players playing the deck, they often are playing the deck a little bit more slow. So here I just, just let it all go, and we play very aggressive. We do the whole special summon Sirocco and pitch Necrogonder here, and I'm not sure if that's the right play or not. And so we set Torrential in case we're playing against Blackwing. We don't entirely know. And we also we have the Necro Gardener here to protect the Greffer in case we draw another Vayu or something, or we can make the Kai's play. So again, I'm not sure if this is the best way to play. I do see a lot of players just slam and have no regard for what their opponent's doing with this deck, similar to the way people play Blackwing. So I just feel like this format has really shifted to players playing extremely aggressive. And I don't think it's very calculated, because I see people doing it turn one into just one back row, and it's not like they could possibly have a read if it's Torrential or Mirror Force. So I just think people are saying that you have a 15% chance or something like that to draw Mirror Force turn one, and you don't have it, and they're just playing aggressive. So anyway, back to the match. Obviously now we know they're on hero, so this is like the worst case scenario, because now we have to deal with the Stratos. Ideally, we probably would have just had D-Prison here, and then just D-Prison, and then maybe made the Armed Wing next turn. Again, I think I just Necro Gardener here, and just to see if we can draw another monster we want to pitch to the graveyard. I probably could have sequenced this a bit differently here. I think this is fine. You know, this is something they're going to have to deal with. This card's actually very difficult for the Hero Beat deck to deal with, because anything more than 1900 attack, if they don't have a Trap or a Spark, is strong. So we don't attack with the Dark Refer, and the reason why is there's a lot of Hero Beat players now that are main decking Gores. That seems to be something cute that people are trying to do. For whatever reason, I just decide not to attack, and they actually have the Gores, which is that's a pretty good read by me. Just so you're all aware that there are plenty of Hero Beat players, because back initially when the deck came out, nobody was playing Gores, and you would just say, okay, I have open shot, he has 4,000 damage, and now the Hero Beat deck has evolved in the sense that it main deck scores because of that, because players just didn't respect the fact that there was there was just no Gore, so they just swung. So we don't attack there. We actually get heavied the second we set 2, so we get heavy there, so that's a -1. And now they have to make that's kind of okay for us, because they actually lose the Ocean doing that. So we're in a little bit of a spot here. We draw another D-Prison. So the question is, do we set D-Prison and then just D-Prison the Absolute Zero, or do we Caius? I think Caius is probably the better play, because D-Prison on a Alias is probably ideal, and we don't have anything else to set, so even if they spark, they just have to spark the D-Prison, chain to the D-Prison. So maybe I shouldn't set both. I'm not sure what the right play is. Again, this is not about playing the right play. This is more or less showcasing the deck and showing some of its strengths here. So we got heavied, mind you. We've been heavied once for a -1, which some number of time they're going to have that. They also Stratos and got a +1. They've also resolved a Miracle Fusion. So they're doing, the deck is really popping off right now, and we're just top ducking. And we'll see if we can get back into this game. And they hit us with a Spark. I guess that happens at some point. We could have not done that and just D-Prisoned, and they would have sparked the other card anyway. Or we could have just taken the 1900 attack directly. I guess that could have been fine too. So we are down 4 cards here, just top decking. And they also resolve a Future Fusion. And we just draw and we're slamming. So this deck is just drawing and slamming. Every card seems to be playable. Everything works well. We are going all out now. We know that Gores can't be dropped here. So we're going to put them on a 2-turn clock, essentially. And so at this point, their hand is completely dead until they draw Mirror Force. So they don't actually have, if they draw a dead card here, it's maybe another Spark or something. They actually just lose the game off of a top decked Armageddon Knight. But they draw Mirror Force, so they set a bunch. So when they set 4 cards here, or 3 cards here, so in my eyes, they just probably don't have anything real. And I have game on board, so I'm just going to swing with this. And of course, we run into a Mirror Force. So we've been heavied for a +1. We've been Mirror Force for a +1. They've resolved Miracle Fusion and Future Fusion. They've hit us with a Spark for a +1, and we are still in this game. So and all it took was a top deck Armageddon Knight. And at this point, like, we can still top deck an Armageddon Knight, and we can send the last Vayu and still have a playable monster. Like, this deck is crazy. We don't Mirror Force here. We decide to take the 1900. And I do set I remember this play. I do set the Plague face down because my opponent likely thinks that this is either a Raikou or a Hamster. And I'm trying to get them to spark before, hopefully not attack it and just spark it. Because if it's a Raikou, they can't spark and damage up. And this Alias is really all they have. So they actually do exactly what I wanted them to do. So that was not a bad play. Of course, they have another alias, and we are we do decide to mirror force this one. So this Chaos Sorcerer, I do like this tech. I think this is pretty cool. It's live right now, but I think at this point we really want to wait and to see if we can get a plus with it. So we don't do anything. We just kind of pass, and we'll take 2,500. So they have resolved 2 Miracle Fusion and a Future Fusion, and we are still alive. Top decking for our life, and this card here is just a blowout. This card is so strong in this deck. It is a auto win when you pretty much resolve it. So now we know that we can reuse all of this stuff here, and we drop the Chaos Sorcerer. They do bottomless, and we don't care because now we get to do it all again. So I'm trying to think if there was a better. Maybe I don't know why I send back Necro. Maybe that's the right play. I don't. Either way, we're gonna drop some cards here, and they. Oh, they don't bottomless the Sork. That's right. The absolute 0 resolves. So we go again, and we attack for 23. And so that Gorz has been dead in their hand the whole time because we did not attack with Gref for turn 1. And they now at this point, I know they don't really have anything because they're special summoning Cyber Dragon in defense. And mind you, I could have won the game right here. I was not paying attention. Typically, because I could have just set Card Trooper and contacted with the Cyber Dragon. I'm not sure if this deck, if the actual side deck played, I didn't look, if it had Future Fusion in the extra deck. It didn't even cross my mind. Because typically when you make Chimera Tech, you're usually using your own Cyber Dragon. So I should have just set the Card Trooper here, made the Chimera Tech if it's in the extra deck. And we would have just won because I only have a call. So yeah, that's kind of foolish by me there. But either case here, they're top decking as well. And we are going to Necro God on this in case we draw a Caius or something. We draw Dark Arm. Now, we have 17 cards left in our deck, and this card is still live. That is insane. So we actually make a pretty cool play, so I'm glad that we got to do this little play here rather than, obviously, we should have won last turn. But so I actually attack with Card Trooper here and take 2,000 to draw an extra card so I can stack for Plague and then drop Dark Arm. It was a little bit more work than it needed to be. If I could have just contacted, I would have won. But so we're going to do that play now. And obviously the Dark Arm sticks. And that's that. So I don't necessarily need to make Colossal there. I'm not sure what it could have been. Any Stardust. It doesn't really matter. Their only out is really top decking Miracle Fusion. But I don't think they had any more absolute zeros left. So it didn't matter because they've already resolved 3. So that was just a showcase of how good the top decking. Every card you top deck just works. Armageddon Knight. The defensive traps are really strong in the deck. Raikos, Hamsters, like Burial is just an auto win, as you saw. So let's get into the next match here, or the next game rather. And I actually don't really know entirely how to side deck with it. This card doesn't feel that good against the hero deck. I don't think it probably shouldn't be sideboarded in. I'm not entirely sure. I'll have to look at the deck at the end of this video. Actually, we can just pull it. Oh, we can't pull it up. Could pull it up at the end of the video and just kind of see what's in the sideboard. But yeah, this card, after I realized how bad it was, I don't side them in anymore. Because good players are not going to give you the DD Crow to fizzle the Miracle Fusion. If you're playing against somebody who just slams with the Hero Beat deck, then they might just try to absolute zero like Miracle Fusion out of nowhere, and when they only have one hero or one water in the graveyard. But good players are going to wait until they have one on the board so that they can insulate themselves against the DD Crow. I should have known that Matt would do that. So we drew pretty bad here. We do have a D Prison. And we luckily get to resolve it. Card Trooper, extremely good right now. This card really should be in a lot. Any deck that can play it, I think, should be playing it. It's so strong against this deck. It's so strong against Hamster, Raiko. It's just a really good going second card. It kind of keeps you, it mitigates the fact that you went second because, again, going first is almost better than a coin flip chance of winning. I think it was like 60%. So that kind of helps a little bit. We do mill a half of Armed Master there, or Armed Wing rather. And we're back in the game here. We do Mirror Force this. We like Card Trooper. Card Trooper is really good because you just want to be milling. Unfortunately, we don't hit anything good, and that's a one downside of the deck is milling, right? It really does work. When it works, it feels very good when you're milling when you're milling plague spreaders and Vayus and Sirokkos, it's really hard to lose. But sometimes you mill Dark Arms, Allures, and heavy, and then they just set their whole hand. So you have to take the good with the bad. I probably should just torrential here, and yeah, I should have torrential that when I saw the second diva, because I had to figure that they were going to brain control here. They don't hit anything. And then we torrential that. So that was kind of, probably should have just torrentialed, making but at least we got brain control. Like, brain control's gone now. That's the best spell of the format. Like, it's broken. Obviously Miracle Fusion is very strong, but so we lose Card Trooper there. I would have liked to get a draw or maybe another mill, but so at this point I think we're just going to pass, and that's what we did, and we're just going to take 1700. We dust that in the end phase. Let's see here. Oh, and there we go. We have a live Armageddon Knight. This card's really good. And let's see if we can. Obviously, we can't resolve the Armed Wing because they have DD Crow. But if we could, like, we're just right back in the game again. So at this point, they could Miracle Fusion, but they don't. Because if I have DD Crow, it fizzles, right? So I'm guessing they're going to wait to summon the Alias here, because a lot of bad players, I wouldn't say bad players, maybe even new players, are going to Miracle Fusion right off the bat there, and they're going to get punished by DD Crow. So this card's probably not that great siding in unless you're playing maybe at locals or playing with people that are just kind of new to the format. I think that if you're playing against some of the better players, they're just not going to give you the DD Crow option. So, and there they go. They see how they insulated themselves. So yeah, we still DD Crow because we make them use their own alias there. So it's not, we don't lose. So I guess it did still kind of work out, but anyway, I think we just pretty much lose here. If we don't draw anything, we're out of the game. So, and we lose. So we're going to go to game 3. At this point, I literally just, I say, okay, we're not going to DD Crow. Let's take out the DD Crows and let's try pulling the rugs. So I also like to use this as kind of a test session too, to see what might be a good side deck choice. So I put in pulling the rug. I'm not sure this card's that great. It's only good going first because you're hoping to hit Stratos or Diva. So we have a few things we can do here. We could Rhoda for Armageddon Knight and send a piece of the Armed Wing. Or we just set Raikou. I think Raikou is just better in this situation because we're hoping that they summon Stratos, we can pulling the rug and then maybe hit a back row with the Raikou. That's kind of the plan here. So, and then they summon Gilman. So Gilman is just putting in work here. Obviously, we destroy it. No other choice. And then there's Card Trooper. But I like to hold Card Trooper here because now it can run over Stratos. It can run over or tie with Alias. And puts our opponent in an awkward spot unless they have D-Prison, which they have set double D-Prison. Interesting. Nobody wants to D-Prison an Armageddon Knight that uses effects, so they're going to take 1400. And we kind of match with back row here. Our opponent makes a good play. They don't attack. So we actually play around Mirror Force now. Obviously, Ocean can bounce itself and reset itself, but we're okay if our opponent's using D-Prisons on Armageddon Knights and Gales. I think we're probably in a good position. So they bounce it back, which is fine. Uses their normal summon. And now we're going to go Card Trooper mode because they just use the D-Prison. My guess is they don't have another D-Prison. And what do we mill? Yeah, we see this is one of those terrible mills. We lose Okias, we lose Dark Arm. Grefford is not a big deal, but and that's kind of the good and the bad. So they have another D-Prison. But our opponent does not want to attack here, and they're not gaining any advantage. So we really don't have any pressure to do anything. We don't care. If they had a Stratos or an Alias that they were bouncing, obviously, or Stratos is really the one you don't want to see them bouncing. We'd have to act, but we are just playing slow here. We could tribute for a Sirocco, but you know that they likely have a Bottomless. They do. There's a Kai. So now I'm going to make a play here. I'm going to see if we can. I'm hoping they don't have Torrential, but maybe Bottomless. Of course, they have Torrential, so we are okay with that because we have a Sirocco follow-up. And we elect to go with the Vayu here. We probably didn't have to D-Prison this. Could have just left it on the board, but then of course I know that they're going to they're likely going to have a Bottomless, so we just go with the 800 Vayu play, which is fine because it puts pressure. Nobody wants to really have to deal with that. And there's a Strato, so hopefully our pulling the rug pays off, and I think they have Solemn. They do, so we got a Solemn out of the pulling the rug. I guess it's pretty good. And I don't know what I'd do here. I actually D-Prison that, so trying to think why I do that. I think I do that just so I can hit for 800 again. I think I'm trying to put them on a... and also I have bottomless, so if they decide that they're going to summon Alias, I can bottomless and they're going to have to spark the Vayu. So I think that's the reason why I just use the D-Prison there. I wonder if I should hold the Allure a little bit longer. Again, I'm not like overly confident with this deck. I don't play it often, but either way, we're just going to beat for 800. And DD Crow is a card that's great when I'm using effects from the graveyard, but when I'm not, just sits there and waits. So obviously, I already put the Vayu in the graveyard. I just know they're going to spark it. And I'm okay with that situation. They're going to use spark at some point. You can't, like, there's no way of completely keeping them off of spark. And if they're going to spark on a Vayu, then that's fine. So I think we set both here and we say go. So I know that they still have a bunch of divas left in the deck. So at least pulling the rug didn't seem like it underperformed here. Just, got a Solemn out of a Stratos. I think it's, like I said, it's only good going first. It does hit this deck. It hits 4 cards in the deck, but they're cards that are very strong. Like obviously the Diva is a huge part of the deck, and the Stratos is like the best normal summon in the game. I'm not saying you should side deck it in. I'm just something I tried this time. It felt average. So we're not going to Mirror Force that. We're trying to get a little bit more value. So the only thing that would stink here is if they actually had a Spark for the Chaos Sorcerer, but they don't. And this card is just really good. I think that if I was to play this deck, I would probably play this version with the Chaos Sorcerer. This card has helped us win 2 games, essentially. Game 1, and it's really helping us here. They do the chain bottomless there, so that's fine. As you can see, like, the deck is really consistent. When it's drawing all the pieces it needs, the Miracle Fusions, the Sparks, and all that, it works well, but sometimes you just work with the deck and, like, don't see any Gemini Sparks and only see Alias, or you just see like a bunch of Hero Blast and Sparks and they're useless. So it's hard to say. I don't know. The deck is good when it works. I don't know. I'm just not a huge fan of it, but it's strong. So again, we kind of hold off here. We're not burialing anything yet until we can make a big play. I probably could have Necro Garden that attack, and then I could have had another target to burial back, but still, I'm kind of waiting a little bit here. Want to get as much value as we can out of the burial. And I think at this point, so when I see people set a bunch of cards like that, I know half of them are not real. Like, you haven't said anything all these turns, and now you draw 1 card, and now you're setting 2 or 3. Like, to me, it seems like those are probably not real cards, and they're looking for me to hit them with Raikou, I'm guessing. And so we hit one of the old ones, which happens to be a Hero Blast, but all they do is destroy Raikou. We don't really care about that. And I think we're going to make the play here. We try to Vayu. They actually decide to put the Sirocco back. So at this point, if we would have had Necro Gardener removed, then we would have been able to return Necro Gardener and double Sirocco. So it would have been a little bit better. Probably was the right call. It's not like it's the end of the world. Doesn't make that much of a difference here. So that was a pretty explosive turn because of Burial. So at this point, we just win the game because we have Stardust on the board. I know that they play DD Warrior Lady. We saw that game 1. So I'm assuming that it is a DD Warrior Lady set, and we're going to just try to run it over with their Alias. And we actually win the game. So what are their back rows? Nothing real. Brain Control is pretty strong, and then Miracle Fusion, but they waited on it. And yeah, they just waited a bit because they were worried about DD Crow. So that's kind of the problem there. I think we talked about after he was reading Mirror Force, which I did have, so I kind of wouldn't have got much value anyway because I would only had the 1 Raikou on the field. So anyway, again, this is not about the gameplay per se. It just kind of shows you that the deck is extremely explosive, extremely consistent. Vayu is very, very strong. It doesn't feel like it has a terrible matchup versus anything. And I like the deck in the sense that it can be explosive when you need it to be explosive. You can kind of turn it on, and or you can kind of play the slow control game with it. Zombies, on the other hand, of course they have that explosive play, but they require a little bit more setup. And I typically feel that the deck is better played more slow and control. I like how this deck kind of has that turn it on, turn it off. You see people play this in War League. They slam everything they have, kind of like I did in game 1, and just burn everything in your hand and hope your opponent doesn't have anything. Or you can kind of play more like 10 foot. I think Arc kind of plays very slow too, more calculated, and really try to grind out your opponent, because all of the Vayus in the graveyard are +1s essentially. You got to get them in there, but if you mill with Raikou a Vayu and a Sirocco, that's a +1. So you can really grind your opponent out by playing slow. So this is why the deck is one of the top 4 decks of the format right now. It wins often. Let's see if we can pull up the list really quick and just look and see what I had in the side. So I didn't actually even have the Chimera tech, so the card triple play was irrelevant. But if we did have Fortress Dragon, then I was able to contact with the card trooper and just win game 1 rather than doing that crazy card trooper ram play, try to drop Dark Arm. But turns out that was probably the play anyway. But anyway, it's not about the gameplay. So next deck will be Hero Frogs. I have literally never played that deck before, so but you will see, and we'll showcase why the deck is so strong just by drawing and just seeing the cards and how they interact with your opponent. So if you would, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.